Hello everyone, welcome to the program. This is Politics Today live on Channels Television. I'm Sean Kimbaloye in Abuja. Let's bring you up to speed with the situation in assessment of the aftermath of the Edo governorship election of 2024. Today, the governorship election petition tribunal has adjourned till 18th December for continuation of its pre-hearing session and a petition filed by the Asoi Godalo and the PDP against the Independent National Electoral Commission on Governor Armando Apebolo and the All Progressives Congress APC. The council to the parties on resumption of the sitting adopted answers in their pre-hearing information sheet, after which they applied that the tribunal adjourned till next week to hear pending motions. Prior to the sitting, the tribunal held an inaugural session where the chairman of the three-member panel, Justice Wilfred Ochi, sought the cooperation of council to ensure smooth proceedings. The council to the parties assured the tribunal of their dedication to professionalism in the discharge of their duties. Aside from the PDP's petition, 6 other petitions from our court party, the Action Alliance, the Social Democratic Party, Allied People's Movement, Action Democratic Party, and Zenith Labour Party are also before the tribunal. So much to talk about. Atiku Abubakar speaking. Well, when we imagine that whatever Atiku Abubakar spokesperson says is what Atiku Abubakar invariably is saying. And it was a direct response to the SGF George Akume in an interview where he said that the North should wait till 2031 and allow Bola Tinubu to run for a second time or be the president for a second time. That's getting a lot of attention. The argument is, how many years has the North spent since 1999, and how many years has the South spent in the explanation or the analysis of the balance of power? We'll be getting deep into that analysis. But first, let's check out some of the political roundup stories.
The Southeast Caucus in the Senate has joined other stakeholders in the polity to call for broader consultations on the tax reform bills currently pending for consideration and possible passage by the National Assembly. Leader of the caucus, Senator Eyinaya Abaribe, made this known today during the press briefing after a closed-door meeting with senators from the 5 southeastern states of the country. Abaribe underpinned that the Southeast senators are not opposed to the bills, but are advocating for extensive consultations with their constituents and key stakeholders before a final decision is made in both chambers of the National Assembly. Rights activist and legal practitioner Dele Farotimi has been granted bail by a federal high court sitting in Ado-Ekiti. Farotimi was granted bail in the sum of 50 million naira with a surety in same amount who must provide landed property as collateral. The Bishop of Sokoto Diocese, Bishop Matthew Kuka, is lamenting that Nigerians are dying daily in the name of religion and politics and called for an end. He made the call at a high-level discourse on religion and democracy organized by the National Peace Committee in Abuja. Bishop Kuka also lamented the inability of security agencies to protect Nigerians against killings in the name of religious differences and political ideologies. The executive chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, Mr. Ola Olukoyede, has stressed the need for young people to close ranks and confront the monster of corruption, noting that the menace affects all age groups but bites harder against the prospects and possibilities of Nigerian youth. Speaking at a town hall meeting organized by the EFCC in commemoration of the 2024 World Anti-Corruption Day in Ilorin, Kwara State, Olukoyede said all hands must be on deck to tackle the menace more fiercely, particularly amongst the youth, than any other age group in the society. Zamfara State Governor Dauda Lawal has rejigged his cabinet and assigned a portfolio to the newly sworn-in commissioner. Today, Governor Lawal chaired the Zamfara State Executive Council, during which the new commissioner was sworn in. A statement by the governor's spokesperson, Suleiman Bala Idris, revealed that the governor made a minor cabinet reshuffle in the portfolios of commissioners. The statement added that Kaura's appointment follows Manir Haidara's resignation as commissioner and his subsequent election as chairman of Kaura Namuda local government area. Governor of Borno State, Professor Babagana Zulum, presented the 2025 budget tagged the Budget of Recovery recovery and continuity, with a total sum of 584.7 billion naira aimed at consolidating the state's developmental strides. The budget prioritizes health, education, and economic recovery, alongside critical investments in security, infrastructure, and social services. The budget comprises the capital expenditure of 380.8 billion naira and the recurrent expenditure of 203.9 billion naira.
Thank you so much. And there you have it. You've been served with your political roundup stories. So let's tell you what happened earlier today at the presidential villa in Abuja, where, of course, we know now that the chief of defense staff has visited President Bola Tinubu, and that visit has come with also some reassurance that security might be better in the country. The chief of army staff also was saying to have visited after assuming office officially, taking over from the late chief of army staff. Take a listen to him.
I will do my best to make Nigeria better in terms of security, and that I'm going to explore doing things maybe in a different way. Probably I'll get some other results that will make Nigeria better. That's my major aim of coming here. And to seek his support, which he's been doing over the years, and I expect he will support us to do better. Well, I actually visited two formations. That's the one in the Northwest, 8th Division, and the Theatre of Operations in the Northeast. Well, basically, I was there to speak with my officers and soldiers and to make them realize that there's need for us to end all these forms of insecurity in Nigeria. And I made it bold to tell them that I'm going to do things differently, and I expect better results going forward.
That's the chief of army staff there. So there's been some reactions to the interview granted by the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Mr. George Akume, where he has perhaps indicated that President Bola Tinubu should be allowed to run the affairs of this country for another 4 years from 2027. And he's also inferred in that interview that the North should go and queue behind the South and come back to seek for election in 2031. That may have gotten the attention of the presidential candidate of the PDP in the 2023 election, Mr. Atiku Abubakar, where his media advisor, Paul Ibe, today took to a social media platform X, where he says that Nigerians should be allowed to decide the fate of who becomes Nigeria's next president after President Bola Tinubu. And so the argument about what has happened since 1999 has already cropped up. How many years that the South has run the affairs of the country since 1999, and how many years has the North run the affairs of the country since 1999. According to the analysis, of course, what we do know, the North has had 11 years, South 17 years. If you make a calculation, Olusegun Obasanjo from Southwest, 8 years. After him was Umaru Musa Yar'Adua from Katsina State, who died in office after spending 3 years. Then Goodluck Jonathan from the South region of the country took over after him and got 5 years in office. And afterwards, it was President Muhammadu Buhari who was in office for 2 terms and got 8 years. Then comes Bola Tinubu from the Southwest, who is spending part of his first 4 years if Nigerians renew it in 2027. Now, the question is, who runs the affairs from 2027? Now, if you look at the calculation, out of these years, 11 years for those who have run from the northern region of the country, and 17 years from those who have run the affairs coming from this southern part of the country. Now, if you look at what Paul Ibe said on his Twitter handle, he says, quote, "Where then does true equity and fairness reside? By the year 2027, the South will have enjoyed 17 years of leadership, 8 years under Obasanjo, 5 years under Jonathan, and 4 years under Tinubu, while the North will have experienced over 11 years. With Yar'Adua 7, 3 and Buhari 8, this results in a disparity of 6 years between the North and the South, casting a shadow over the balance of power. In any case, the power to elect and vote out a government lies firmly with the Nigerian people, entrusted to them upon the government's ability to prove itself worthy of the people's ballot. But as the Tinubu government demonstrated that it deserved to be re-elected, the answer, alas, is as clear as the heavens themselves. God forbid." Those are the words of Paul Ibe, spokesperson to Atiku Abubakar. But what really triggered that statement? It was from the interview from George Akume, the SGF. And I quote what George Akume said. He says, quote, "President Tinubu, as a Southerner, should be allowed to have a second term, meaning that those eyeing the presidency from the North in 2027 should look beyond that year by waiting till 2031. He went further to say, "It is the will of God for Alhaji Atiku Abubakar to be president of Nigeria. Even at the age of 90 years, he can get it, but he and other Northerners in the office now should look beyond 2027. Those are some of what has been attributed from that interview to the SGF, George Akume. I'm being joined by Mr. Paul Ibe, who is the media advisor to the former vice president and presidential candidate of the PDP in the 2023 election. He's live for us here in our Abuja studio. Thank you so much, Paul, for joining us tonight.
So the pleasure is mine. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this we assume is the thought of Mr. Atiku Abubakar. You speak for him.
Well,
the voice of Paul is the voice of Atiku.
Well, even if it's not the voice of Atiku Abubakar, the voice of Paul Ibe is also the voice of a Nigerian citizen. And so I'm a stakeholder. And I think, I've been thinking hard, what they have informed what the SGF, said. Because the last time that I checked, that was not part of his job prescription. And you see why they are failing at this job of governance. It is because they are focused on politics. Why must we reward a student who, did not pass his examination? Why must we reward him with promotion, her with promotion? And it appeared that Akume's, job in that particular interview, was very clear. Kidnap, the aspirations of Atiku Abubakar and any other Northerner. And that was very responsible of him, to say the least.
Is Atiku Abubakar still intending to run in 2027?
That is not the issue.
But it's an issue, though. It's an issue.
No.
Is Atiku hoping to run in 2027?
You can't put the cart before the horse.
And which is a cat and which is a horse now?
Listen, Seun, the country is at crossroads as we speak. Look at the indices. Look at food inflation. Look at inflation. Look at the cost of doing business. Look at the life of the average citizen. Must we be playing politics with their well-being? That's why I said you can't put, the cart before the horse. We can't be talking about aspiration, but I think it was irresponsible of the SGF who have gone on national TV to, so to say, kidnap, the aspirations, the ambition of northern leaders. He's not qualified.
But is it fair to say after Buhari spent 8 years in office, it is natural for a southerner to, because that was the agitation and what some northern leaders within the APC actually were fighting for. And that was what caused the kind of upset or the kind of ruckus in your party, in the PDP, as to those who believe that how can a northerner, after 8 years of Muhammadu Buhari, succeed another northerner?
It is wrong to assume. that the whole of Nigeria is either about the APC or even maybe the PDP. If the IGF had put a caveat that he was speaking, what he was referencing, affects the APC, we can understand that, but not the whole nation. Listen, let me even break it down, for you. The 17 years versus 11 since 1999. The 16 years of PDP, the South has ruled for 13 years. The North for 3 years. Under the APC, the North has ruled for 8 years. The South, with President Tinubu, 2 years. By 2027, 4 years. And when you sum all that up, there's still a balance of 6 years, 1 term and a half. The South will have ruled for 17 years, and the North for 11 years. When you minus 11 from 17, you have 6 years. So when we're talking about equity, you must come to it with clean hands.
I mean, there are those who will say this is the course of nature, not according to, nobody wished. I mean, Umaru Musa Yar'Adua was very loved. He was a president that a lot of Nigerians loved. He died in a moment where a lot of Nigerians felt disappointed that they lost a dear president. It wasn't the interest of anyone to have wished the president to have left office in that manner. So there are those, and it was a natural effect by the effect of the constitution and our laws that who becomes the vice president should naturally take over from him. And you know some of the issues that came up in the presidency when the former president was sick. And afterwards, it does look like a pictorial, not a numerical representation of the balance of power. Face of a southerner, and not a northerner comes. A southerner comes, a northerner comes. It was the effect of nature that we had the shortage in the chances of the North. Can you blame the South for that?
The agreement, as it was then, with the PDP, about the rotation of power was applied in breach.
In what sense?
Doesn't matter. I mean, Yar'Adua died. May his soul rest. Jonathan completed his, tenure. That is understandable. But whatever happened subsequently was an application of that particular agreement in breach.
What was that agreement?
I mean, the rotation, between the North and the South.
That the power should have gone to the North?
Yes. I mean, there was no reason why the North should not have allowed to complete the balance of the 4 years of the,
But Jonathan was, when you say there was an agreement, but Jonathan was planned to run for office. He lost only to Buhari. And if you said Buhari should, if you said that North, there was an agreement for the North to run, Buhari became president and it's a Northerner.
Let's not belabor that argument. The reality, as you and I speak, is that the South has ruled for 17 years versus the 11 years of the North. I mean, that is the reality that we're talking about. And that is the reason why I said, Governor Akume, well, fortunately, is a Northerner. And if he had elected to sell his birthright, for a mess of porridge, that is up to him. But I don't think that other Northerners will, toe the line. Maybe I probably will blame it on, too many cups of brukut.
So that's getting low, please. Is another statement. So when you make reference to him in that sense, I don't think it's fair. Let me say that, do you see that, or what are you inferring that it is the time of the North in 2027? Is that what you're saying?
Listen. You see, why the desperation of the Tinubu administration? We'll be talking about 2027. When they have not concluded 2024, 2025 beckons, and 2026. 2 more years to impact on the lives of Nigerians. Why are they so desperate? And every calculation is focused on 2027. So the question is, when will they have time for governance? The nitty-gritty of governance.
My question is that, are you saying that the North should be the one to have the chance in 2027?
Why should they not? Why should they not?
You're saying it's a turn of the North in 2027?
I'm not talking about turn. I'm not talking about turn.
Because the balance of power
even if it is turn by turn, let's assume, for the purposes of argument, that it is turn by turn. What we are getting now, is that the best that we Southerners have to offer?
You're making reference to President Bola Tinubu?
That's right. I'm making reference to him.
That's the person Nigerians voted for.
Voted?
You don't think that?
So Nigerians also can unvote him, can they?
If they so wish, isn't it?
That's right. So why is Akume, trying to kidnap the aspirations of other people?
So you've not answered my question, Mr. Ibe. Are you inferring that is the turn of the North in 2027?
What I'm saying is that the North, and if President Tinubu so desires, have a right, constitutional right, to present themselves, for an election. It is up to Nigerians to decide.
The North precluding Atiku or including Atiku?
Why will you preclude a citizen? Why? On what basis?
And you've not answered the question whether or not your principal could be on the ballot.
Why wouldn't he?
Does he still have the intention?
It's not about him having the intention. What I'm telling you is that it is wrong. It is wrong for SGF Akume to have kidnapped the ambition of other people.
He's thinking,
because they are Northerners.
He made an inference that age may not be on the side of your principal at that time.
What time is he talking about?
He's making reference to 2027, 2031.
2027?
He says by 2031 that your principal...
Atiku Abubakar is very healthy. Atiku Abubakar is very fit. Atiku Abubakar is very sound in mind. Atiku Abubakar is a person of ideas. I work with him on a daily basis. I know his competence.
In his 80s right now?
It's not in his 80s.
2027, he will be approaching his 80s.
Are we not running?
He's approaching his 80s right now.
We're not running up.
No, I'm talking about 2027.
Donald Trump, who just won election with a landslide, mandate, is 78. It's not about age. Let's not... we've had young people given opportunities in this country. And, we've seen what they've made of it.
So Atiku is better than Tinubu. That's what you're saying? Because you were questioning the choice of Nigerians, whether Tinubu is the best for Nigerians.
Even Nigerians are beginning to express, doubt, about seeming choice that they may have made.
In what sense?
The outcome of the election. Let's not get into that, Shane.
But your principal contested it and he failed.
Where did he contest
Up to the Supreme Court.
The same Supreme Court that is in the eyes of the storm. Reference Dele Farotimi's book. And the strategy has been now for this administration to suppress public opinion, to hound journalists. As I speak to you, my colleague in the office, they've used the instrumentality of the state, working in cahoot with Wando, owned by the nephew of the president, and they have dragged him to court for doing an analysis, the facts of which are, in the public domain. So this is what they are doing. Opposition, kill the opposition parties. The journalists hound them, throw them into jail, using the cyber, security, cyber bullying or whatever it is that they call it. Because they know clearly that they have nothing to offer. Nigerians are worse off than they were 2 years ago.
If you're speaking in this manner, it does mean that, when the meeting between Peter Obi and Atiku Abubakar held in Adamawa, There are those followers of Peter Obi who said, God forbid, the same word that he used about Tinubu and what George Akume said, that Peter Obi cannot be a running mate to Atiku Abubakar, because I followed some of the thread of what Peter Obi supporters are saying, that at the time that there will be another election, that Peter Obi will be sounder in mind and Atiku Abubakar will be older. And why will a Peter Obi be a running mate to an Atiku Abubakar? Is that what the meeting was about? Is there consideration that Peter Obi and Atiku might have an alliance or work together ahead of 2027?
I think we are going ahead of us. We're overanalyzing things. What happened was that Obi was in Yola, on the invitation of the university. It was his 20th anniversary and the 16th, Founders Day. And he was invited as a keynote speaker. On arrival, Atiku invited him, for breakfast. And, they had breakfast. And then he went for the program, in the university that he came for, and then topped it up with going to teach at the Feed and Read program, an internationally acclaimed, program of, the American university. And that was a mere breakfast that was served. And I wonder what would happen when a buffet, I'm not talking about the English buffet, I'm talking about the Chinese buffet is served. What, people will be saying. The truth of the matter is that Atiku Abubakar had promoted opposition parties to work together, to, come together, and that is possibly the only way that they can kick out this incompetent and clueless government. And I believe that discussions, have been going on and all of that.
There is even a fear that the alliance of Peter Obi and Atiku Abubakar might cause a damage to a chance of the APC for re-election in 2027. And is Atiku considering that? Because there are those who feel that one of the biggest errors that Atiku made for him to have lost that election was allowing Peter Obi to leave his side. Does Atiku Abubakar think in that line, that maybe he could have reconsidered his choice of holding Peter Obi to his side?
Let me start with, what you said about the APC and all of that. That is no reason, a justification why they have to conscript the political space. They must allow people. It's about choice and freedom of expression and freedom of association. Those are the bedrocks of democracy. It's well enshrined in our constitution. And this government, and its officials, and they need to take heed of that and stop using, the agencies of, of the state to harangue, citizens. Now listen, lessons have been learned from 2023 by all parties, including Atiku Abubakar. And I believe that it is on the basis of the lessons that have been learned that they are moving forward and having discussions with the hope that the same mistake, that happened, where a knife was put between the things that held them together, and, whichever way, they had gone, Tinubu was, was a winner, in all of that. I think they have learned that lesson, and, they want to, be united as they go forward.
Is united mean that they can run on the same mandate?
Well, all of those will be things that the discussion are going to have and all of that. I'm not part of those, having that discussion.
Is Atiku Abubakar having conversation about some new political movement coming up?
Atiku Abubakar is having conversation with all options are on the table.
Just for him to be president?
Not just for him to be president.
But he wants to be president.
You're also not being fair to Nigerians when you think that this is about Atiku Abubakar. No, sir. It's not about him.
You can be president. I can be president.
I can be president.
So if Atiku Abubakar wants to be president, is that a crime? And I'm asking whether you are his spokesperson.
No, but you said...
And I said earlier, the voice of politics...
You said just to be president.
No, I'm asking that
Nigerians are deserving better than what we are getting. And they have said that. The last time you and I, talked, I made reference to it. And you were asking whether Nigerians are having any regret and all of that. So I said, it's up to the things that they are saying. They are feeling the pinch. They are, look at the cost of living. It's never been this bad, in our country. And there is no hope.
The president and his party has said, give us some time.
Time?
Look, there are things that we are working on. Is it possible to give them the benefit of the doubt that there works? And look at the naira to the dollar right now. Naira is gaining in just less than a week from 1,007 to 1,500 at the parallel market. Could this be some of the signal of what they say they are working on, and it will benefit Nigerians in the end? Light at the end of the tunnel, that's what they call it.
Sheung, at this time of the year, Nigerians in the diaspora, they come home. And they come home with an inflow of foreign exchange. It's Christmas. The New Year is around the corner. It happens every year.
So
you're not a stranger to this.
So any positive that comes out of this economy is not by the doing or the activities of the economic team or this government.
If any positives come, I'm a citizen, and I shop in the same, from the same, the same market, as you. All the offerings that I get are not elsewhere. But the truth of the matter is that what we have in this dispensation is an Orwellian state.
Mr. Ibe, do you have a feeling that Atiku Abubakar could be perhaps one of the best options Nigerians have to lead this country?
Atiku Abubakar has shown competence when he was vice president, claimed, forget all, what happened as a result of politics, the parting of ways, and the rest of it. Don't forget that the Obasanjo-Atiku administration, one of the years they had about 15% GDP growth. It's unprecedented. An average of about 6-7% of GDP. By the time they've cleared all of their debts. So Atiku is
it the glory of Atiku or the glory of Obasanjo?
It's a team. He worked, he was part of that team. So whatever it is that Obasanjo had achieved, Atiku was his mentor. He had learned some lessons from, working with him. And he was going to replicate that. And he will still replicate that.
So you think Atiku is a sure bet for Nigeria if Nigeria looks his way?
I don't know anyone who has been better prepared.
Why has he failed to be able to lead the PDP if he's so good a leader?
PDP?
The party that looks like it's in shambles right now.
The last time I said to you, and I say it again, the PDP has a national working, committee.
But Atiku Abubakar is seen as a national leader of the party. The last presidential candidate. The onus, they say, is on him to be able to fix the party if the party is directionless.
Well, I still, restated that the process to, bring back, the party from the precipice is still ongoing.
If Atiku looks like a good candidate to lead this country, how can Nigerians trust him when he has not been able to lead the PDP, the party, his own little constituency?
We know what has been going on in the PDP, so let's not try and use PDP as a benchmark.
Nigeria is
we know what happened.
Nigeria is more dynamic. Nigeria is more complex than the PDP's problems.
You and I know, and Nigerians know, that the PDP has become a playground for the APC. In that quest to destroy the opposition parties, not just the PDP, even Labour, and using the FCT, minister.
So you blame the FCT minister for the problem of the
He is a man Friday. He has a mandate. And the mandate is to kill, the PDP.
Who gave the mandate?
Oh.
What evidence do you have that he was meant to kill the PDP?
Yeah, Sheung, and use your tongue and count your teeth. That is the only mandate that he has in the PDP to kill it.
But you don't have evidence to that?
It's not a question of evidence. Everybody knows that.
Mr. Paul Ibe, thank you so much indeed. Paul Ibe is a media advisor to Mr. Atiku Abubakar. Thanks so much indeed.
My pleasure.
I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
We'll take a break, everyone, but when we come back, our attention will be on national security, and I'll be joined by an expert, one very respected voice on issues of national security. Are we on the right track with what the Bola Tinubu team are doing in terms of securing this nation? There is a report by Beacon Security. We'll be looking at that and some of the indices on our national security. We'll be back, everyone. Join us again. Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us. Earlier, we told you about the meeting of the Chief of Army Staff when he visited President Bola Tinubu earlier today. Let me remind you that he has said that he is committed to securing the nation with the help of the president. And he said that he's going to ensure that he approach things in a different but dynamic ways. And he's also briefed the president on the manner in which to go in ensuring that under his watch as the Chief of Army Staff, things of security situation are being handled. Let's get some perspectives on the security situation in the country and perhaps some of the issues that have cropped up in the past. I'm being joined by the Executive Director of Beacon Security and security consultant, Dr. Kabiru Adamu, who is virtually with us on the program. Thank you so much, Dr. Adamu, for joining us tonight.
My pleasure, Sheung. Good evening.
I appreciate it. Now, if you hear what the Chief of Army Staff said, meeting with the President, I imagine that was his very first meeting with President Tinubu since he assumed office. And I can imagine that I assume that it's a courtesy call to say, yes, sir, I've resumed duty, and what would you have me do? But from what he said, what do you make of the new man at the helm of affairs controlling the nation's army?
Well, it's to wish him well and to also remind him of the responsibility that is ahead of him. He took over from a man who was a soldier in and out and demonstrated that in his leadership abilities. He was at the forefront. And I think a lot of Nigerians would bear witness to that. Now, having said that, in some of the statements he has made, initially, immediately after his appointment, he did indicate that he will carry on with the legacy of the immediate past Chief of Army Staff. And the legacies were around three things: welfare of the soldiers, interoperability, in other words, working together with the other arms of the military, the Air Force and the Navy, and of course with the Chief of Defense Staff, and then with the other security agencies. And then, of course, the third point is equipment repository of the Army. Today, after the meeting with the President, he hinted at two things. He talked about inclusive leadership and talked about innovations. Now, whether you look at these two or the first three, which is a carry-on from the immediate past Chief of Army Staff, they are commendable notions. And they are things that anyone who wishes well for not just the Army, but for the defense sector and the country as a whole would be happy hearing from the Chief of Army Staff. There are a couple of other things that I'm hoping as he progresses he would look at. Number one is to remind himself that he is just one out of at least about 29 or 28 other security departments in the country, and that he needs to work with them to achieve the operational mandate of not just the Army, but the defense sector. Number two is the institutional problems that are facing the Army. Issues around discipline, issues around promotion, issues around welfare, name them. He would need to look closely at those things to allow the Army to achieve its mandate. And then, of course, some of the burgeoning challenges that are affecting Nigeria in terms of security issues, which hopefully we're going to talk about shortly. He needs to realize that the responsibility is one that is on him, and it's a responsibility that cuts across the entire security sector. Like I said, there are about 29 MDAs that are responsible for addressing those securities, and embedded in those NDAs, there are coordinating elements, and then there are operational elements. So that realization would help him go a long way.
I want to imagine that with a very, very imposing security problems that Nigeria has in terms of internal and external security pressure and threats. The towering physical figure of the Chief of Army Staff might also scare the threats away, and perhaps some of his experience might come to bear. He was a teacher. The man manned one of the largest infantry or corps of the Nigerian military. The man was also perhaps a classmate to the late Chief of Army Staff. Also, this man had served in ECOMOG in Liberia, ECOMOG mission in Liberia. So he's come with some profile that is respectable. But the big question here right now is the reports that your office have released about the security situation and the threats in the country. We're talking at a moment where we have the security, an emerging security threat in the northwestern region of the country, Sokoto, Kebbi, some part of Katsina. We're seeing some issues in Zamfara. We saw what Kaduna State Governor has done in terms of the carrot approach. Give us an idea of what the military can do immediately. He says he wants to look at things a bit more differently.
Well, like he indicated innovations, and innovations would mean technology. And yes, technology, it can be a force multiplier for the military. It can help boost intelligence. It can help boost the performance of the military. But Shehu, what is even more important is getting the buy-in of the people. And I'm quite delighted with the narrative that I've been hearing from the Chief of Defense Staff, where he has repeatedly reminded, especially the political class, of the relevance of balancing the kinetic with the non-kinetic approach to addressing the security challenges. Like we've indicated in our report, what is even more important than beyond anything is the understanding that the drivers and the triggers of insecurity are rooted in these non-kinetic elements, the socio-economic circumstances in the country, the porosity of our borders, the environmental issues that are driving insecurity, political issues, local and, of course, international, especially if you look at circumstances around the Sahel at the moment. So understanding all of these things, and then, of course, working together with the other elements within the security sector. I talked about the porosity of our borders. It's not the army that would manage that. No matter how good the army is, if weapons and combatants continue crossing into the country through those porous borders, there is really nothing that the army can do. So that understanding, and then, of course, promoting through the coordinating elements within the security sector, synergy, collaboration, coordination, cooperation among all these units within the sector would be the way to go. I mean, all the attributes you've mentioned, they are amazing. We have to give him that. But no matter how good he is, if he does not promote this interoperability, unfortunately, it will be very difficult for him to succeed. So I like the fact that he has highlighted the interoperability, which is also what the Chief of Defense Staff is highlighting. So the rest is to see how that will be implemented. And again, the most important thing is to get the buy-in of Nigerians, and it is only through these non-kinetic measures that I've mentioned. Unfortunately, it's not the responsibility of the military to get this buy-in. It is more the responsibility of the political class. We have a policy in place. They call it the policy framework on countering violent extremism, which is embedded inside the Office of the National Security Advisor. There are different elements within the government and within the society that have responsibility for implementing this PCVE, policy framework on countering violent extremism. Yes, the army has a role too, but the role of the army is quite insignificant. In fact, the entire military setup have only about 20% of that role. The rest of the 80% is with the civilian component, the political class, you and I, especially the media as an example. So this is what I'm hoping going forward that we would see, not just from him, the Chief of Army Staff, but from the other key players, the stakeholders within the security and defense sector.
there is an intel that Beacon Security released in its report. And I'm particularly looking at the page 11 of the report, a comparative analysis of the incident and the threat in the month of October compared to the month of November. It does look like things are looking up and looking well in terms of some of the incidents and the trends. It shows that there are decline in the threats and decline also in incidents and a decline also in the fatalities, which is somewhat a good news, meaning that lesser people died, lesser people were abducted, lesser people are affected by insecurity situation in the country. But there was a rider, there was a note that you put in the page 11. And it says that you said that there is a fluctuating nature in the trend of security threat analyses in the country. But what can you say specifically? We are going into the month of December. There are a lot of activities across the country, and people are usually exposed to security threats. Give us an understanding of these figures: reduction in abduction, reduction in incident, reduction in fatalities. This cannot be fluke. This cannot be a guesswork. It must be that the security agencies are doing something.
No, definitely. We've seen an increase in security operations, and we highlighted it in our report. In particular, Operation Fansanyama, which just started in the Northwest. We've seen an intensity of, interdiction operations by the military. In several other parts of the country, we're seeing those type of operations, and it's not just by the military, by the other security agencies. So yes, this type of successes are being recorded. In the three metrics that we've presented in the graph you just showed, there were reductions. In the case of abduction, a reduction of about 19%. And then in the case of fatalities, a reduction of about 38.45%. But Shehu, what is worrisome is because we do this regularly on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, we do an aggregate for a period. So as an example, from January to this month of, let's say last month, 11th, we know that more than 12,000 persons have been killed as a result of this. So it's a little bit difficult for me to clap my hands when I know with that global, realization that about 12,000 people have been killed. But the missing elements are two words: sustainability and resilience. Whatever measure we introduce, it has to be sustainable and it has to be resilient. We have to arm our communities with the capacity to be resilient. And that is why earlier on I spoke about buy-in. The measures that we're introducing, that the military is doing, commendable. And we've mentioned it severally in the report. But we have to move forward to make those measures sustainable so that the ownership of those measures is by the communities. And we now have a resilient community that can resist the dastardly and dangerous violent attacks by these threat elements. That is when we wake up and clap our hands and say, we've brought this to an end. And I think that is where this administration is headed. Hopefully, if they take the advice that people like us and several others are giving in terms of increasing the non-kinetic component, let the political class take ownership of those non-kinetic elements, introduce them within the society so that we see a reduction. I'll be happy one day if I look at these figures and then I see only 100 people being killed in a month. And then, of course, it goes down to 10. Then I'll be happy.
So quickly, before I get you into, you do an analysis of the FCT of Lagos and some of the security threats. About all the ones you did in the Northwest shows that there is a major problem is the issue of abduction. There's still the issue of abduction in the Northwest region of the country. And the new threat, the cell that is threatening Sokoto, Kebbi, and that region of the country is still also there. And the military says they're clamping down on them. But let me ask you, and this is pointed actually, would you say in the last year or so that Nigeria is more secured than this government met it?
Shehu, with all sense of responsibility and using data and nothing more than data, unfortunately, no. Like I mentioned earlier on, 12,000 Nigerians had been killed as at the month of November. Last year, the total figure was less than 10,000 for the entire year. So unfortunately, using data alone, the figure tells us that the situation is not better. However, like I mentioned earlier on, there is a lot that is ongoing from our security forces. They are doing a lot, but it has to be taken a step forward. Let the ownership, the buy-in, go to the communities, and then maybe we would see a reduction, the type that we want.
Now, I'm going to wrap up on these and a very brief one. The issue of the new cell in Sokoto, Kebbi, and threatening and taking over some communities, which the military said they are chasing them out. How best do you think we can handle it? How much of a threat do you think that is?
We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We have 3 amazing policy documents. The National Counterterrorism Strategy. Again, the word is national. The second document, I spoke to it earlier on, which is the policy framework on countering violent extremism. And then the third one is the Act, which is the Terrorism Prohibition and Prevention Act, as amended 2022. Now, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We just need to go and implement those policies the way they are. Unfortunately, and again with all sense of responsibility, we concentrated in the Northeast a little bit too much without seeing what was happening in the Sahel. If we had taken note of developments in the Sahel, we would have implemented even more of what we're implementing in the Northeast, in the Northwest. Now, what is happening at the moment is that groups that are operating in the Sahel, that are affiliated with Al-Qaeda and that are affiliated with Islamic State, they form some form of collaboration with groups that are operating in the Northwest. This is not rocket science. Anyone who has been monitoring development would have known that the radicalization of those groups was just a matter of time. And now that we've left that to happen, we should go back and implement the recommendations. Now, there are 4 components in all of these 3 documents that I mentioned. The need to forestall, the need to identify, the need to prevent, and then, of course, the need to implement. Now, the moment we do that, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. And I must say the National Assembly has a role to play in this regard. The oversight function that they play to ensure the executive arm implements this thing, to support in terms of budgeting, we need to see an improvement in that. So that whole of government approach that we talk about, we need to see it. In 2025, I'm hoping to see a whole of government and a whole of society approach to ending insecurity in Nigeria.
Dr. Kabir, thank you so much for the insight and the work that you and your colleague have done on that report. Thank you so much indeed for your time tonight.
Thank you for having me.
But that's our show for today, everyone. Many thanks for watching. I'm Sean Kimbale. God bless Nigeria.